Oh, let me check. Yes, Chloe, well live.
Yay! Hello.
Hello. Chloe, we have to wait a couple minutes just so our viewers can join us. So they
Okay.
will receive notifications from Facebook and YouTube platforms, and then they will join us.
Sounds good.
So how are you doing, Chloe? So I miss you very much.
Oh, I miss you guys too. Yeah, we used to do a couple seminars and stuff together in Bishkek. Yeah, I'm doing well
Oh, great.
as we can. Yeah. How about you? How are you?
I'm also fine, thank you very much. So, oh, I'm so happy our first guest already joined us. So, good evening, dear friends. Welcome to our virtual session about national parks of the American West. So, I'm super excited to introduce our guest speaker today, Chloe Campbell. She is a third Peace Corps volunteer from 2015 to 17, based in Balykchy, and moreover, she is data management librarian at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So thank you very much, Chloe, for joining us today and accepting the invitation. I'm really happy to see you in our session, and I think I'll also almost forget about it. Dear friends, please type your questions and any comments are welcome. So if you write them in the comment section, so our guest speaker Chloe will answer them after the presentation. So thank you very much for joining us today and being with us. And I think it's time to give a turn to you, Chloe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for asking me to come speak. So since I was a Peace Corps volunteer, I'm gonna try and introduce myself in Kyrgyz. So bear with me. It's been 3 years, so we're gonna see how this goes. So salamatçılarımı, benim adım Chloe. 3 yılların in Balykchy şehrinde işledim. Hazırım in Colorado ştatta yaşayım. Jana bugün biz uluktuk parkta sülüşübüz. How was that?
It was
Yay, I miss Kyrgyz. It was an awesome language to learn. So, without further ado, let's go to national parks.
yes.
So today I'm going to talk about national parks of the American West. And I chose this topic just because I love nature, and national parks in America and preserving nature are a big topic for us. And I chose the American West because there are 50 states in the United States, so there are actually a lot of national parks, and I wanted to narrow it down. So there are even more, a lot of parks in the American West, but I'm going to narrow it down. Ida, can you see when I go to the next slide?
Yes, yes, sure. I can see your slides.
Okay, perfect. So, national parks. Balykchy Parkta, what are they? So, national parks are natural areas protected by the government. And in the United States, our government agency that runs this is called the National Park Service. And you can see their logo in the top right corner. And that's an arrowhead, which is a Native American tool that's been used. And on it, of course, is the mountain, the tree, and then one of our famous animals of the American West is the bison, that little white animal at the bottom. So national parks were started by President Theodore Roosevelt, and I'll actually talk about one of the first parks that was created. It's Yellowstone National Park. And that was in like 1892. So they've been around for a while. And the National Park Service's mission is to conserve the scenery and the natural and historic objects and wildlife therein, and to provide for the enjoyment of the same in such manner and by such means as will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. So basically what they're saying is that National Park Service wants to keepsake all of our natural lands and make sure that they are preserved, that they will last, so that future generations can come back and enjoy them in the same way that we're enjoying them now. Oops. Ah! Oh my goodness, going too fast. Okay, I got it now. So now we're going to talk about that geography component. So I said national parks of the American West. So I want to look at what states are in the American West, just to review them for some people. So you can see all the States in blue are what we classify as the West. So that's Montana, here's Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, Idaho, Utah, Arizona, and then Washington, Oregon, Nevada, and California. And then also, not connected, Alaska and Hawaii. But today, that's a lot of Western states to cover. So I'm just going to talk about 4 states, national parks in 4 states. So Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and Arizona. So the entire United States, there are 61 national parks. And in Montana, there are 2. In Wyoming, there are 2. In Colorado, there are actually 3. And in Arizona, there's 2. And I do have that link at the bottom there. It goes to the National Park Service website, and you can actually click around on interactive map, and it'll show you what national parks are in each state, and you can actually go to that park page and look at it. And what they're doing right now, because of COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're in, they will actually give you, some of the parks, not all of them, will give you a virtual tour. So you can visit the park virtually. So that's really fun right now for people who can't actually come to the park. You can look at some of the sites, you can see some of the natural beauty. They have videos, so you can see things. They have sound bites, so you can listen to animals that are in the park. But we're hoping we can go enjoy our national park soon. So today, I'm going to actually be talking about my favorite 6 parks. And like I mentioned, those were in 4 different states. So the first one we'll talk about is Glacier National Park in Montana. Then Yellowstone, that was the one that was first created, one of the first parks ever created. And that one borders on Montana, but most of it is in Wyoming. We'll also talk about Grand Tetons, those are in Wyoming. Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado, in my state. The Great Sand Dunes National Park in my state as well. And then another famous one, the Grand Canyon. And that's in Arizona. So to begin, we're going to do Glacier National Park. Glacier National Park, I picked this park because I actually got to work in it for an entire summer, for about 6 months, I think, from April to October of 2014. So actually right before I came to Kyrgyzstan, I was working in this park. And you can see in the map image on the right of your screen, that green area at the top is Glacier National Park. So it's actually a pretty big territory of land. It was established in 1910, and it's named after the glaciers that started to form 170 million years ago. So if you look at some of the mountains, those areas are actually where glaciers used to be. So glaciers are those large bodies of ice, and they move really slowly, so they carve out the mountains. In the picture on the right with the really pretty blue lake, you can see there were probably glaciers nestled up in there to carve out the mountain, and then what's left over is actually some of the sediment from the mountain will turn that lake that color blue. And one of the reasons why I liked Kyrgyzstan so much is because they had really pretty crystal clear blue lakes like that. So there are definitely probably glaciers in Kyrgyzstan, in the mountains there. Glacier National Park has over 130 lakes, so some of them left over from that ice that melted. And then it's just one side of the park is very moist and wet, and the other one is a little bit drier. Oops. The park was first inhabited by Native Americans, and the group that lived there was called Blackfeet, and they're still there to this day. The park has one road that goes through the entire park. There's a couple little groups off to the side, but one main road, and it's called the Going to the Sun Road. So it takes probably, depending on how long, if you go off on little hikes or trails, it can take you an entire day, and it's really enjoyable, beautiful drive. And as you can see back to the map, this park borders actually the space up at the top is Canada. So there's a part of it that you can access if you go through Canada as well on the opposite side. And while there's only one road in this park, there's actually over 700 miles of trails. So the best way to see the park is actually to get out of your car when people drive through, and then go on a hike. So the most popular thing to do here is hiking, camping, and people actually bike that big road that goes through. I think I forgot to mention national parks. They're the equivalent to, in Kyrgyzstan, like Ala Archa and Shonkamin. I forgot to mention that, just to give you some perspective and parallel with Kyrgyzstan. Anyway, for Glacier National Park, that goat in the bottom right picture is actually the unofficial mascot of Glacier. You'll see mountain goat pictures all over in the gift shops, and they are actually all over the park too. When you're driving through the road, they're up on the rocks climbing around. And then the picture in the bottom left is of a plant called bear grass, and it's a really interesting plant. And bears, Glacier National Park is actually known for grizzly bears and black bears, and bears will actually eat that plant. But when it blooms, it comes up on that big stalk and then is white, and it's a iconic image of Glacier Park too. I just want to give more imagery of this park. It's pretty massive and obviously one of my favorites. So the left image is of an area on the east side of the park, and you can see one of the glaciers that's still up there. Salamander Glacier is that white snow area. Glaciers are getting smaller, so we're hoping we should go to Glacier National Park. But this was discovered by Grinnell, a famous explorer. There's another glacier that you can't see that's in a lake up there, and it's called Grinnell Glacier. And one of the fun things to do that you can do when you go to Glacier National Park, if you look at the photo on the top right, there's those red buses. And these are famous red buses that were around in the 1912s. To take a tour of the park, you could get in one of these, and there's no roof to them, so you can look around at all the beautiful scenery. And so they're still around today, and people's jobs are to drive the big red buses up the road, and you can enjoy your tour of the park in a car that way. And then the bottom right photo is just a beautiful photo of one of the bigger lakes called Lake McDonald, showing the lake and the mountain scenery that Glacier National Park is famously known for. And of course, not only are we protecting the natural beauty, but also the animals that live there as well. And Glacier, while the mountain goat is also very popular, bears are. So these are photos that I actually took. The one with a lot of grass and you see the 3 bears, that is a grizzly bear. So there's the mama bear and then 2 cubs by her. One of the baby cubs is further out. And grizzlies are pretty ferocious. So they actually teach you when you work at the park, and they have a info little video to watch too when you're in the park. If you go to the visitor center, is you need to make noise when you hike, because if you scare the bear, that's when they might attack. So they actually teach you to make noise while you're hiking. So you'll clap or sing a song or something so that the bear will know, and he'll actually like get off the trail or stay away from you, because they don't really want to interact with humans. And the other bear picture is actually of a black bear, and this is by one of the entrances of the park. And I was driving around by myself one Saturday morning, and this little guy popped out of the forest. So I had to grab a picture of him. And I stayed pretty far away from these guys, of course. They teach you in national parks to let the animals be. This is their home and their territory, and we're just coming to visit it. So keeping our distance and not feeding the animals, of course. And then in the bottom right corner is just a different view of the park. Again, beautiful mountains and lakes, but this is on the east side of the park. And again, it reminded me a lot of Kyrgyzstan, the beautiful mountains there. So Yellowstone National Park. This is the park that was the first national park designated by the United States and Theodore Roosevelt in 1872. So actually earlier than I think I said. If you look at the map, there's a part of it that borders Montana, and a little bit of the park goes into Montana, but most of it is going to be in Wyoming. it actually sits on a dormant volcano. So with all that volcanic activity and lava flowing under the surface of the Earth, this park is known for its geothermal activity, such as geysers, mud pots, and hot springs. And you can see this pool in the bottom left-hand corner. That color is from all the minerals and the geothermal activity happening under the surface. And its most famous geyser, and a geyser is it's like hot water that shoots up from the Earth. I have a picture on the next slide. Their most famous geyser is Old Faithful, and they actually built a cabin by it that you can stay in. It's like a giant lodge is what we call them. There's a picture of the inside of the lodge in the bottom right corner. So people here in this park, they also like to hike, camp, bike. I feel like those are staples of all national parks, to stay in the wilderness. But you can also stay at this lodge in Yellowstone. So here is that picture in the center of the geyser that's shooting up. And they actually figured out how often it will shoot up the water. So it's a little schedule that they have out, and you can come and watch the geyser. I did have a video of this, so if I share this slide presentation later, you can click on that image and it'll take you to my YouTube video. And many people, you can see how many visitors are there. Many people will record the geyser. So you can watch that happening in real time. It's quite spectacular. It starts out small and then begins to shoot up. So it gets pretty high. And like I said, in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see bison, and that's the unofficial mascot, I think, of Yellowstone and the American West. And to the right, of course, beautiful waterfall. This is actually a pretty massive waterfall in an area called the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. So it's not quite as big as our actual Grand Canyon National Park that I'll talk about later, but it was so beautiful and spectacular, like the Grand Canyon, that they named it after the Grand Canyon. Okay, Grand Teton National Park. So this is another park in Wyoming, and it's actually right next to Yellowstone. So I wanted to include this one. It's fairly small, but Americans traveling or going on road trips will usually go to both parks. You can see in the map on the left-hand side, the larger square is the Yellowstone, and then the smaller, darker green below it is Grand Tetons. So pretty close, and you have to usually go through, if you're coming from the south, go through both. So Grand Teton National Park was founded in 1929, and it's basically a log mountain range, and there's a couple lakes as well. And it's known for its beautiful flora and fauna, which are the plants and animals that live in that area. There's a lot of hiking and boat tours because that large lake is Jenny Lake. You can take a boat tour there. Not as much biking in this area because there's not many roads that go through. Basically one that skirts the side of it, and then you can take all the trails and hike in. In the winter, though, there's a lot of national forest, so not exactly still protected land, but you can do skiing and snowmobiling in that land around it. Not actually in the park, but a lot of the area around it. So in the wintertime, it's very popular as well. And then we're coming now to my state. Rocky Mountain National Park, Colorado, is actually an hour away from where I live in Fort Collins. You can see in the map, it's that little green area, pretty far north in the state. It was founded in 1915, and it's famous for its hiking and its lakes and the elk. And the elk are the animal that you see in that center photo. I had a video as well of, because in the fall, when the leaves change colors, you can see the photo right next to that. The aspen colors turn yellow. The elk will mate, and they make this really unique it's like a bugling sound. You can look it up on YouTube as well, and that link goes to a YouTube video of elk bugling. So a lot of people like to come in the fall and hear the elk and see the colors change and hike. The far picture on the right of the people hiking, there's a lake that you can get to that's called Sky Pond. You actually have to climb up part of a waterfall to get to that lake. It's pretty spectacular. I've done that one quite a few times. And Rocky Mountain National Park is actually one of the highest national parks out of that 61 that are in the US at 14,259 feet. So we get pretty high. And another great park in Colorado is the Great Sand Dunes National Park. Now, this one is actually in southern Colorado. You can see in the map area, it's pretty far south. It's that green area at the bottom. And it was founded in 1932, a little bit later than some of the other parks that we've looked at. And it's known for its sand dunes. So all this sand in front of the mountains, it's just, it's spectacular. You go to it and you see this massive amount of sand in front of these mountains. You're like, how did this sand get there? So what actually happened is that there's a valley and it creates this funnel between the mountains. And, you know, a long, long, long time ago, there was a lake bed that had sand, and then the lake dried up. And the winds came and moved the sand through the funnel, and then they couldn't get up and over the mountains, and so they stopped and deposited right in front of that mountain range. So it's great to see sand and then a huge mountain range in front of it. Here in this park, there's actually sandboarding. So instead of snowboarding, people will take different things to slide down the sand dunes on. That's pretty fun. You can also camp and hike are pretty popular. Again, this one does not have a big road that runs through it, so a lot of people will just enjoy the sand dunes and wander through them on the side. Okay, the last national park we're going to talk about. This is the Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona, and you can see it's pretty extensive. It's in the map at the top. It extends pretty far. It was founded in 1919. And it's actually the gorge of the Colorado River. So that, if you look at the bottom right photo, the river that runs through this massive gorge is the Colorado River. And to get some perspective, it's across the canyon is 18 miles. So it's 18 miles wide. And then down to the canyon floor, it's 1 mile deep. So it's a pretty deep canyon. If I do send out this presentation, you can also look it up on YouTube and see some different videos to really get a perspective of how vast the canyon is. And at the canyon, you can hike, camp, and you can actually take river rafting through the river. And some of these photos, you can see the photo on the left. Grand Canyon has some of the best sunrises and sunsets, just how the light plays off of the different curves and plateaus. So that image on the left kind of tries to give some perspective. Look how small the people are and how big the canyon is, and then also the beautiful lighting. So I have some resources here, some links that you can go to. Again, the National Park Service website, nationalparks.org, and then they do the virtual park tours. And then National Geographic has some resources for like teachers if you wanted to teach more about the park and have some other resources. I was going to click on all those, but the screen sharing is not working when you click on the website. So I'll leave those and send those to you all for later. So then, I have any questions out there?
Chloe, Chom Rahmat, sonun presentacja болды. Thank you very much. So I think you can stop sharing the screen.
Okay.
Okay. So yes, here we are. So thank you very much. I was amazed by the beauty of this national parks and find out the similarities between Kyrgyzstani nature and this national park beauty. So thank you very much. So the questions. The first question is, are the national parks funded by the federal or state government?
So it's usually federal government. Yeah.
Federal government. Okay. So the next question, I'm very interested in Yellowstone National Park. Is this geyser dangerous for Earth in future or not?
Sorry, is it dangerous for what?
Geyser.
The geyser. Yeah.
For Earth or in future or not?
Yeah, so they actually have signs all over the paths, or they create boardwalks that you have to stay on that path because the water and the volcanic activity is right at the surface. So if you step off, you will be burned. So they have certain platforms and areas where they keep you away at a safe distance so you won't get hurt by this amazing thing. But you can view it, just not too close.
Okay, thank you very much, Chloe. So the next question: what state is the most similar to Kyrgyzstan?
Oh, I would definitely say it would have to be one of the states in the Rocky Mountains. So of course, mountainous. Maybe parts of Montana probably were, like Glacier National Park that I showed and had the most photos of. I'd say maybe that one.
Montana state.
Montana.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chloe. So the next question: what did you do in Balykchy as Peace Corps volunteer?
So in Balykchy, I was an English teacher at the Lenin School, and also held an adult English club outside of that as well.
Great, thank you very much. So the next question: do you stay in touch with your host family?
I do, actually. I stay in touch with my host family and my counterpart, and then a lot of the friends that I used to work with. And actually, one of my friends, she's a Flex alumni. She came and visited me in Colorado, and I took her to Rocky Mountain National Park.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Chloe.
Yeah.
So the next question: are you planning to visit Kyrgyzstan in the future?
I'll bet they, of course. Maybe a couple more years, and we'll let COVID-19 settle down. But yeah, I would like to come back and visit everyone.
We will wait.
Okay,
Chloe.
You can visit me.
So please visit us. Thank you very much, Chloe. The next question: which national parks did you visit in Kyrgyzstan?
I visited Ala-Archa, Chongkemin. I think those were the big ones. And then, of course, I've been to Istikada, and I didn't go to Sarıçalık, but the two big ones, I visited those.
Great. So, Chloe, when I was reading about the national parks of the United States, I noticed that most of them are located in the west part. Why?
In the western part? Because
Yes.
it's the most beautiful part. Mountains, I feel like they provide a lot of diversity in animals and plants, and they're beautiful, right? Kyrgyzstan has beautiful mountains, lots of different plants and animals. And the west, yeah, it's one of the best.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chloe. So, what are some rules before visiting the national parks?
Yeah, like I mentioned, you can go to a visitor center. So in our national parks, there's usually a building that's set up, and you can be a park ranger if you want, and you can people can come and ask you questions about the park, and or if you're a visitor, you can come to these areas like the visitor center and ask knowledgeable people about the park, and they live in the park, and they can show you a map and tell you where to go. And usually in these visitor centers, not only will you know the history and learn the history of the park, then they'll also tell you what you can and cannot do. But some of the major rules that kind of go across all parks would be, don't feed the animals, don't get too close. This is their home, their area. You're there visiting. So don't feed them, otherwise they'll get used to people. And let them be and give them space. A lot of it is to stay on the path too, because like I said, they wanted to preserve these natural areas. So if everyone wandered all over the place, you would stomple on plants or you'd create different paths, and it would disturb the earth, and it wouldn't be the same for future generations. So they encourage you to stay on the path. If you camp, they don't want you to leave your trash. You should go and camp and then pack back what you had camped with, like your food. Don't leave it there. Bring it back and put it in the trash. They teach you about the trash bins because there are a lot of bears, and bears are curious and they can get into trash bins. There's special trash bins that the doors, if you pull down, humans can open them, and we put our trash in and close it, but bears and other animals can't get in. Trying to think of other things. Yeah, for Glacier National Park, because of the bears, you want to make noise. In some of the other areas, you don't want to make noise. You want to enjoy, the birds chirping and the natural surroundings. But for Glacier, it's a special park, and because of the bears, yeah, you want to make some noise.
You mean grizzly bears?
Grizzly bears and black bears. Yeah.
Oh. Thank you very much, Chloe. So, do interaction with animals, I mean non-dangerous animals, allowed or not?
No, there aren't animals allowed. Some people will bring their, like mobile homes or camper vans that they can stay in. And so in some of the campsites, you can have your dog in your car, but you just can't let them out. Or there are little areas where the dog can go. But yes, they don't want dogs or animals roaming all over that don't naturally live there.
And not feeding at all.
Exactly.
Okay. So the next question. In Ohio, I had a choice to go whether to park or meeting with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So we chose the park with my colleague from Kyrgyzstan. It was amazing. Which is your favorite place in your area?
In Kyrgyzstan or in which I guess I'm not understanding the question. What is my favorite place where?
Maybe we should ask where, maybe in Kyrgyzstan or in the States.
Which is my favorite?
Favorite place? Yes.
Okay, my favorite place in Kyrgyzstan is, of course, I lived in Balykchy, so I was on Isykyl, but I loved, Altan Arashan, that area, outside of Karakol. That was beautiful. And the hot springs up there, I have hot springs in Colorado, and so that was one of my favorite places. And one of my favorite places here in Colorado, in the States, is actually Rocky Mountain National Park, the park that I talked about.
Cool. Thank you very much, Chloe. So the next question, what are some threats to national parks that you can mention?
So actually what they've been talking about recently is because of social media, which I should mention, you can follow these different parks on social media and see information about them. They're beautiful photos that they post. But because of social media and things like that, people will take those iconic Instagram shots or selfies. And of course, everyone wants to go and then take that same photo. So there are more people in the parks than have been in the past. So National Park Service is trying to deal with having a lot of people using the parks and still making sure that they stay clean and are around for future generations. I think that's one of the biggest ones recently. And some people don't follow rules or will write or carve on trees, and so trying to teach people, I still think to respect the parks is a challenge.
Yes, sure. Like respecting the nature is the most.
Exactly, and making sure you are cleaning up after yourself too, and being a responsible nature steward.
That's true. Thank you very much, Chloe. So, can people visit national parks now during the pandemic time?
No, they can't. Most of them are closed. And like I said, there's that virtual tour option. But I think in the States here, we're beginning to reopen things. So I think they're trying to figure out how to reopen the national parks. And of course, it might sound weird that they would be closed because it is outside area. And if people social distance in the outside, they should be okay. But I think the problem is the visitor center and bathrooms and restrooms that the Park Service manages, I think that's where the concern was to keep the parks closed.
So, thank you very much, Chloe. So we have the last question for you. Why people should care about the national parks?
Well, people should care about national parks because they are iconic views of America. I'm going back to that. Why are all the parks in the West? The West is a pretty big expanse. There's a lot of land in the United States, and in the West, there's a lot of land and natural beauty. If we let everybody just roam around in the parks and do what they want, they would probably not be as nice, and maybe some plants would get trampled on and not be around anymore, or birds and animals would get used to people coming up and eating from them, and then they would not survive on their own out in nature and have to come into ask for food from animals or from people. So I think the importance is keeping this natural beauty around for many generations and teaching people the enjoyment of walking and living, if you can camp in nature, and preserve these natural areas so that future generations can view them.
Yes. Well, Chloe, thank you very much. So, I forgot about my personal question to
Oh,
you. Maybe, what do you think about the pandemic situation? How this COVID-19 influenced the national parks? How to say environment or itself?
mhm. Well, like I was talking, the problem with overcrowding, like too many people coming to the national park, I bet it's kind of nice that not as many people are there, and so the animals they're probably like, oh, okay, this is nice, like we're back. Don't have to be cautious about those people coming through. And it might give the national parks, a little break. Let some of, if you work in the national park, you're working to preserve the trails, maintain those. So maybe they were able to work on updating those as well. And there was a trail that was falling apart, they could go back and fix it. So, and also then not as many people are coming into the parks. So I hope funding wise, they'll be okay. Yeah, I forgot to mention, for our national parks, you do have to pay to go in to get them. You can either get like a national park pass, you can pay for an entire year, or you can just buy a day pass if you were gonna just drive through. So they're not getting those funds too, so I bet they're hurting as well.
So wonderful. Thank you very much, Chloe. It was really useful, wonderful session, and we are so happy to have you here. So, and I think I have to read one comment.
Okay.
Chloe, I'm so much happy to see you from Miriam.
Oh.
Yes, everyone is really happy to see you. Thank you very much, Chloe. I think it's time to say goodbye to our viewers. But before it, I want to congratulate everyone with upcoming 8. So, and please stay tuned and check up our schedule. And I think see you on Monday and have a great weekend. So thank you, Chloe, for being with us today, for joining us. It was a wonderful session to learn more about national parks of the American West. And let's do our best, like keeping the nature and like respecting, loving the nature.
Exactly.
The
So that
main
future
message.
people can enjoy it too.
Yes. So thank you, Gloria. Bye, everyone. Thank you for
Bye.
comments.
Bye.
See you on Monday.